So I just finally watched the long-awaited It Chapter 2, and I enjoyed it. Overall, I probably didn't enjoy it as much as the last film, and a lot of the complaints that are going around about the movie are to some degree legitimate, but a lot of it also didn't bother me quite as much. The opening is fantastic. It's actually very similar to what happens in the book. The biggest beef that I had with the last movie, which was really Mike Hanlon's character, how they essentially took his character away and gave it to Ben. They fixed that in this one. Mike is the lighthouse keeper. He's the librarian who calls them all back, and he's got, you know, what he perceives to be all these answers for everything that's going on. This movie was very, very, very long, and don't get me wrong, I was entertained throughout the whole thing because I love these characters. It is my favorite book, so I didn't really mind it all that much, but it's sort of like, it's like The Dark Knight Rises. That's a good movie, but it's a long movie, and you can feel it when you watch it. So there was that, and yet despite how long it was, they also did kind of breeze past certain things like the phone calls and stuff like that. I actually feel that in the 1990 miniseries, the phone calls were a little bit more, you got more of a feel for like who they were. They like took their time a little bit more. They just kind of like rapid fire like went through it in this movie. And I think that's what it is too, because it's like there was sort of like interjections in the original miniseries where it would like, you know, they were adults and one of them would get this phone call and then it would transport back in time and you'd get their story as a kid, and that was really what made up the kids. So by the time you got to the second part of the movie, it's like the phone calls had already been made. You already knew so much about these characters, and it's like they could just really like kind of get into it. And this one, it seemed like they were hurrying to catch up because there was absolutely zero adult presence in the original film. You know, I heard a lot of complaints about the kids' CGI like touch up on their faces. That's not really the fault of anybody like the director or anything like that. And actually, for the most part, I thought it was really good. The only point where it was like really noticeable was when they were in the like underground clubhouse that they had. Looking at Ben's face, it was sort of like, it was pretty bad CGI. I mean, it's not that it was bad CGI, it's just that it was noticeable. But again, like, I can't really blame that on anybody. I feel like I'm giving this movie an awful lot of shit that it doesn't deserve. It is really, really good. Bill Hader is amazing, as is everybody else in the movie. Like, the casting is, like, immaculate. It has a very surprising amount of humor in it, more so than I would say than the first film. They do incorporate things from the book, although they take different routes with certain things that happen. It had about the same, I would say, amount of accuracy that the first part did, and it strayed from the story a lot in certain parts. Pennywise was great. Some people complained that he wasn't in the movie enough. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. I get what they're saying. It's a long-ass movie, and in all that time, you don't get, like, a crazy amount of Pennywise, but I mean, apparently my comparison tonight is going to be the Dark Knight trilogy, but the Dark Knight, I felt kind of the same way about that, where Heath Ledger really stole the show as the Joker, and it's sort of like there were certain scenes where, you know, I found myself, that didn't involve him, that I found myself sort of going like, oh, okay, I want to see the Joker again. Same basic idea there. They kind of wimped out, I think, on the turtle. I know that people think that like the turtle and the spider and all that weird shit from the end of the book and the ritual of Chud and all that, which was sort of a part of the movie, except that they didn't go like all out with that. But like all that weird spacey like godly shit that happened in the book, people are like, dude, Stephen King was on some hardcore drugs, which he was, you know, and it's like there's no way to convert that to film, and I call bullshit, okay? Because when you read a Stephen King book, he paints a very vivid like picture for you. I had a vision of everything that was going on, and they totally could have done that in the movie. I respect Andy Muschietti for having his own like, you know, vision, and it wasn't a bad one at all. Overall, I would say that this is a hell of a lot better than the second half of the 1990 miniseries. I would say that my opinion of this film is almost identical to the opinion I had on the last one, in terms of like directing, writing, production value, like everything having to do with filmmaking, it was superior to the miniseries. But in terms of loyalty to the book, it's 50-50. They took a lot of liberties, but at least this time around, I will say that they got the characters right, including Mike. It Chapter 2, it was a lot of fun. If you're a fan of the book, you'll probably love it. You won't be as bothered by the length of the movie. Honestly, even if you haven't read the book, I think that this film is interesting enough. It's not like you're going to be falling asleep, but you might be kind of like, damn, this is a long movie. I guess like It Chapter 2, I'd give it like, probably give it like a C+, B-, around there. I'd give it a B-. B-. C+ seems a little harsh. I'd give it a B-. It was pretty solid. I would say that the first one is probably more scary. This one is probably more funny, which is odd, but anyways, definitely check it out if you get the chance. It's definitely worth a watch. Like it or not, it's definitely worth a watch. All right, guys, that's all she wrote.